The storm rolled into the valley. Harlan Tate was sitting by the fire when a bolt of lightning tore across the sky. In that flash of white light, a figure staggered into view at the doorway. Her face was streaked with mud, and her eyes were as dark as wet ash. A tall Apache woman, broad-shouldered, muscular, her clothes torn and soaked through from the rain. Her bare feet were bleeding, every step seeming to tear at her skin. Harlan sprang to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun on the table. She stopped at the threshold, trembling, her breath ragged, her voice faint but pleading. "Please, let me stay the night. I will not survive out there." He stood frozen. Rain slashed through the cracks in the door, and wind sent ashes swirling from the fire. In the flickering light, Harlan saw the bruises along her collarbone, the bloodstains spreading down her shirt, and her eyes filled with fear, yet defiant against the world. Finally, he lowered the gun and opened the door wider. "Come in." She stepped inside, each movement heavy with pain. He handed her a blanket, placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of her, then sat down silently, without a single question. Outside, the storm kept howling. But inside that little shack, there were only two strangers, sitting face to face by the fire. And there, in the heart of the rainy, lonely night, a story of redemption and compassion began. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the clouds still hung heavy and gray, like ash. The damp scent of earth and smoke drifted through the cracks in the cabin. Harlan Tate was up early. He rekindled the fire, then glanced toward the blanket near the stove. The Apache woman was still lying there, her breathing labored, her hair matted against her shoulders, her skin pale from the cold. He walked over and gently pulled back the blanket. The bruises on her shoulders and neck had darkened, and her feet were torn open, dried blood mixed with mud. Harlan exhaled softly. What he saw was not just a body worn to the edge, but a soul the world had dragged through its harshest corners. He brought warm water and began cleaning the wounds. She startled, instinctively pulling her foot back, her eyes wide with fear. "Easy," he said, his voice low and steady. "I just want to clean them." She said nothing, but her eyes never left his hands. As Harlan wrapped the wounds, she whispered, her voice hoarse, "Are you one of them? The army?" "I was," he replied, pausing, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "Now I just keep this land, grow grass, and stay quiet." For a while, only the crackling of firewood filled the silence. She stared into the flames, her lips trembling slightly. "My name is T. I am looking for my son." Harlan looked up. "A boy? 6 years old." Her voice broke. "They took him. A missionary group. Said they would save his soul. I have been walking for 2 weeks. No food, no sleep. I have no one else." She fell silent, tears mixing with the smoke. Harlan looked into her eyes, not pleading, just filled with the quiet despair of a mother fighting the world alone. He stood up and stepped outside. The morning wind was cold, carrying the cry of a hawk echoing from the distant mountains. He breathed deep, his hands clenched. In his mind, memories rushed back. Apache villages set ablaze, days when he was a soldier, holding a torch to innocent homes. When he returned, his voice was soft, almost like a confession. "You can stay here, as long as you need. No one will find you." She looked up at him, her lips quivering. "Why?" "Because last night, you begged to live. I have seen many choose death in that moment, but few still have the courage to survive." T bowed her head, gripping the blanket, eyes closing. A single tear traced down her sun-worn cheek. Outside, the faint light crept over the mountaintops. Inside the small cabin, two souls, one burdened with guilt, the other cast aside by the world, were beginning to understand that sometimes salvation does not come from God, but from the kindness within another human heart. That night, the cold came quickly. Wind howled through the mouth of the canyon. Harlan sat beside the fire, the flickering light casting shadows across his weathered face, his gray eyes lost in thought. Across from him, T had fallen asleep, her body curled beneath a thick blanket, her breath trembling softly. He stared into the dancing flames, then looked down at his calloused hands, hands that had once held a rifle, lit torches, and burned villages. The smell of scorched leather, the cries of children, the fire licking across the rooftops of Apache homes. It all returned, like a bitter wind. He had been the one to carry out orders. But deep down, Harland had never truly believed it was the right thing. He closed his eyes. A memory stirred an Apache woman clutching her child. Collapsing in the smoke, he had stood there, unable to move, his feet rooted to the ground. And now, tonight, the fire inside this cabin lit up T's sleeping face. And he saw the same look in her eyes as that woman from long ago, fearful, but unbroken. Harland stood and stepped outside. The sky was pitch black, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. He tilted his head upward and whispered as if to someone unseen, "I burned their village. And now God sends one of them to my door. I do not know if this is a curse or a second chance." The wind replied, cold and sharp. He bent down, scooped water from a wooden barrel, and washed his face, letting the rainwater pour through his fingers as if hoping to cleanse something that had long soaked into his blood. When he returned, T was still asleep. She had curled tighter, murmuring in her dreams in Apache, a language he could not understand. He approached, gently pulled the blanket over her shoulders, and sat down again, his back resting against the wall. In that moment, Harland felt he was no longer a soldier, no longer just a survivor, but simply a man trying to make amends by helping another survive the night. Before sleep took him, he whispered, as if promising himself, "If you have the strength to go on, I will take you to where your son is. I owe the world one act of kindness, just one." Outside, the rain had begun to fall again, tapping softly on the roof of the shack, soaking into the earth like a prayer. And inside that small cabin, two souls burdened by the past were rediscovering warmth, not the kind that comes from fire, but the kind born from hope, newly kindled in a man who had once believed he no longer had any faith in goodness. By midday, the sun blazed down on the canyon like fire. The earth cracked beneath their feet, and the wind carried red dust that settled over everything in a thick layer. Harland tightened the saddle straps, tied on some dried bread and water, then looked over at T, who was wrapping a strip of cloth around her ankle. She still limped, but her eyes had changed. They now burned with the fierce resolve of a mother rising out of hell. "The road to Santa Alvara mission is over 2 days on horseback," Harland said, his voice dry from the heat. "If we go, we will not come back in one piece." T replied, her voice soft but unwavering, "I do not need to come back clean. I need my son." He nodded. They left the canyon, their horses moving slowly across the parched prairie, hoofbeats blending with the whistling wind, like the desert's breath. On the first day, they spoke little. Harland rode ahead, T followed, her eyes scanning the ground as if she might recognize her son's footprints through the sand. That night, they stopped beneath the shade of a yucca tree. Harland built a fire while she sat silently, the flames lighting her sun-darkened face, sweat mixed with dust, her strong shoulders trembling just slightly. "What is the boy's name?" Harland asked. "Nokan," she said, eyes staring into the distance. "His eyes are like fire, afraid of nothing. I promised I would always be there for him." He said nothing. After a while, she turned and asked quietly, "Why are you helping me?" Harland answered slowly, his voice as heavy as stone. "Because once, I needed someone to save me too. But no one came. I do not want that boy to wait the way I did." They looked at each other through the firelight, silent but understanding. Some answers need no further explanation. On the second day, they passed through scorched, barren land. A strong gust blew her hair loose, long black strands brushing across Harland's weathered face. She rode behind him, her hands gently resting on his shoulders. Neither spoke, but their breaths matched the rhythm of the horses' steps. As the sun set, they stopped by a dry creek bed. Harland scooped the last of the water from his pouch and offered it to her first. She shook her head gently. "You need it more." "No, you ride for your child." "I ride for justice." She accepted, sipping carefully. Her gaze met his deep, warm and sorrowful, like the red earth of Arizona. That night, as Harland kept watch by the fire, she slept beside him, her face finally soft, the tension gone. He watched her for a long time, then whispered into the wind, "Tomorrow, we will reach it." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain, and within Harland, for the first time in years, something like hope stirred, warm and real, like firelight in the cold desert. Thank you for being here. If this story reminded you of old times, dusty afternoons, and the sound of hoofbeats echoing in your heart, consider subscribing to my channel, so that every day we can sit together again. And I will tell you another tale from the West. At high noon, the two riders reached the edge of a small village. In the center of the valley stood the Santa Alvara Mission Church, its whitewashed walls cracked with age, the bell tower leaning, half collapsed, but the cross-bearing flag still fluttered in the wind. Below it, a line of children with cropped hair and gray uniforms recited prayers under the harsh gaze of stern-faced priests. Harlan pulled the reins, his voice low. "If the boy is here, we have to move fast." T nodded, her eyes flickering with both fear and hope. They dismounted. A tall, gaunt priest with a cold face stepped out, his hands hidden inside his black robe. "We do not welcome strangers," he said, his tone syrupy and slick. Harland held up an old military badge, speaking slowly. "My name is Harlan Tate. I am looking for a child brought here a month ago, the son of this woman." The priest glanced at T, his gaze filled with contempt. "Ah, the child of the Apache. We saved him from the savagery of the wild. He belongs to God now." T stepped forward, her voice trembling. "No, he belongs to me. I gave birth to him. I heard his first cries. I kept him alive through that first winter." The priest let out a thin, mocking laugh. "You gave birth to him in sin. I will not hand over a soul we have cleansed to a heathen." Harlan's fists clenched. "You call yourself a man of God, but all I see is someone hiding a child from his mother." The priest shrugged. "If you remain here another minute, you will see how unforgiving God can be." Harlan pulled out his old military insignia and slammed it down on the wooden table in the chapel. "I have seen too many die in the name of faith, Father. I am not letting one more fall today." A door creaked open behind them. A thin boy, eyes wide and brown with fear, stood huddled against the wall. T turned. Her breath caught in her throat. "Nokan," she called, her voice shaking. The boy froze, then burst into tears and ran into his mother's arms. Harlan turned his gun toward the priest, his eyes hard as steel. "She came to take back her son. No one has the right to keep him." The priest hesitated, then stepped back. Harlan grabbed T's hand, pulling her and the boy through the door. As they rode away, the church bells rang out heavy, echoing through the valley like a warning. Behind them, church guards gave chase. Ahead, the storm was rising, rain gathering on the wind. Harlan glanced back and saw T clutching her son, her face soaked with tears, but her eyes blazing bright. "Hold on tight," he shouted through the wind. "We are not out of hell yet." The sky split open as if torn in half. Thunder rolled across the valley of Santa Alvara as Harlan, T, and the boy, Nokan, rode hard through stretches of waterlogged earth. Behind them, the church bells still rang, blending with the pounding hooves of the men who called themselves servants of God. Rain lashed down like whips. Red dust mixed with slick mud, and every drop stung Harlan's face like a blade. He glanced back. The torches of the church soldiers were closing in, their flames reflecting off the dark, fevered faces of zealots. "Keep going, through the rocks," Harlan shouted, his voice swallowed by thunder. T clutched Nokan in her arms, bending low against the horse's back. Her black hair clung to her shoulders, muscles straining beneath rain-soaked skin, blood seeping from wounds that had never healed. Each gallop sent a jolt of pain through her body, but she did not stop a mother with only one reason left to exist. Her son. A gunshot cracked through the storm. Harlan jerked forward in the saddle, his left shoulder bursting in red. He gritted his teeth, gripping the reins, forcing himself to stay upright. "Harlan," T cried. "I am fine, just ride," he growled, rain washing the blood down his arm. They plunged into the narrow canyon, where the wind screamed like wild beasts. The downpour erased the tracks behind them. Harlan was fading fast, but he turned his horse sideways, blocking the path, drew his gun, and fired back. The shots echoed through the cliffs. One soldier fell, his torch tumbling into the rushing stream, snuffed out by the current. T stopped, set Nokan beneath a ledge for cover, then ran to pull Harlan from his horse. "You are bleeding too much." "It is nothing, just a scratch," he forced out, managing a faint smile, though his lips had turned pale. She tore a strip from her skirt and wrapped it around his shoulder. The rain would not let up, pounding the canyon as if it meant to drown the world. In that storm, they sat side by side, breath ragged, eyes fixed on the faint light in the distance, the direction of freedom. "They will not stop," she said. "I know," he replied, his voice hoarse. "But I have survived worse hells than this. We will keep going." For him, he looked toward the boy, shivering under the blanket, eyes wide with fear yet burning with fire. Harlan placed a hand on T's shoulder, gripping firmly, saying nothing more. Between the thunder and the rain, they both understood life is only worth living when there is something left to protect. When dawn broke, the storm finally eased. Behind them, the church lay swallowed in shadow. Ahead, the mountain path opened beneath the morning mist. Harlan rose unsteadily, guiding T and the boy onward, leaving behind streaks of blood washed into the rain, the last traces of a night of redemption. 3 days later, the rain stopped. The storm had passed, leaving behind the scent of wet earth, scorched grass, and a quiet peace that blanketed the canyon. Nokan slept, slumped over the horse's saddle, his head resting against his mother's chest. Harlan Tate, his shoulder still wrapped in cloth, pushed forward to lead the way. Every step left a faint trail of dried blood, but his eyes shone brighter than they ever had. As the sun rose, they reached a small valley, a flat patch of land with a stream and the shade of ancient oak trees. Harlan looked around and said, "If there's any place worth starting over, it's here." T nodded, offering a faint smile. Her sun-worn face and deep black eyes, for the first time, no longer carried the weight of sorrow. In the days that followed, they built a shelter from stone and scraps of wood. Harlan chopped trees. She lit fires, and taught Nokan how to set bird traps. Their first meal was nothing more than roasted rabbit and dry corn cakes. But to them, it felt like a feast, a celebration for those who had clawed their way out of the dark. At night, Harlan sat under the porch, gazing at the star-filled sky. In his hand was his old military badge, now dulled and rusted. He turned it slowly between his fingers, the firelight glinting off the cold metal. T stepped outside, a blanket draped around her shoulders, her black hair falling down her back. "Is that from your past?" she asked softly. "Yes, the thing that made me forget who I was," he said, voice low, then looked straight into her eyes. "But tonight, I am burying it, so I can live like a man, not like someone who once took lives." He dug a small hole beneath the old oak and placed the badge inside. She stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder, warm and steady. When the earth was covered again, a breeze swept through, carrying with it the scent of something new beginning. T looked at him, her voice tight with emotion, but sincere. "You saved me, saved my child." "Why?" "I did not save you," he replied, still staring into the distance. "You and that boy, you saved me. From myself." She was quiet for a moment, then knelt beside him and placed her hand over his chest, where his heart still beat strong. "Then from now on, this heart is my home." Harlan took her hand, squeezed it gently. The moonlight lit their faces, two people once cast aside by the world, now sitting together without vows, without ceremony, just the quiet peace of two souls that had found each other after the storm. Inside the cabin, Nokan stirred and called out, "Mother, don't go far." T smiled and answered into the breeze, "I'm right here, my son, right here, with us." And that night, in that faraway valley, Harlan Tate finally slept in peace. No more cries, no more fire of war, only the quiet breath of an Apache woman beside him, and a child dreaming in the stillness of peace. Spring came earlier than usual. The wind carried the scent of warm soil and the gentle murmur of a stream trickling down the hillside. On a small patch of land nestled in the canyon, Harlan Tate was rebuilding the fence around the horse pasture, sweat running down his sun-darkened face. Inside the new wooden house, T was grinding corn, her belly round the sign of a new life soon to arrive. And Nokan, the boy once stolen from his mother, now ran laughing through the yard, his joyful voice echoing through the valley. Harlan looked up, watching them through the haze of golden dust. The sight made his chest tighten not from pain, but from a peace he never thought he deserved. That afternoon, he walked to the edge of the woods, carrying a knife with a silver inlaid handle. On the trunk of the great oak tree near the house, he carved slowly, with care, T. Tate. Each stroke etched deep was a vow, the choice of a man tying his name to the woman who had made him believe in life again. T stepped out, one hand resting on her belly. "What are you carving?" she asked. "The name of the one who helped me forget the war," he answered. She smiled, her eyes gleaming. "What about your name?" "I do not need to carve mine," he said, gently taking her hand, "because it already lives in your heart." The spring wind rustled the oak leaves like a whispered blessing. They sat on the porch, watching Nokan chase a baby lamb. Harlan wrapped an arm around T, his hand resting on her belly, where life stirred quietly. "It will carry the blood of both of us," she whispered. "Yes," he said with a smile. "But if it grows up with kindness, it will belong to the whole world." As the sun dipped behind the hills, Harlan carried a bundle of wildflowers to the patch of ground where he had once buried his military badge. He stood in silence for a long moment, then spoke softly, as if to himself, "Thank you for giving me another chance." When he turned back, T was waiting, holding Nokan's hand. Her smile was like sunlight melting snow. Harlan walked toward them and gathered them into his arms. In that moment, three souls once cast aside had become a family not by blood, but by choice. That night, under a sky full of stars, T's lullaby rose in the still air, sung in the Apache tongue low, tender, carrying the breath of the mountains. Harlan lay quietly, listening to the wind, to the soft breathing of his son, beneath the vast sky. Two lost souls had finally found where they belonged, not in a house, but in each other. True love is not born in peaceful days, but in nights scarred by pain and trials. In the red soil of the West, they had not only found each other, they had found their way back to life and discovered freedom within love. Because sometimes, miracles do not come from the heavens, but from human hands when someone who was once lost dares to reach out and save another soul. And both are redeemed. It has been an honor to share this journey with you. I truly hope that wherever you are in the world, you are safe and happy. I love you, the cherished audience of Wild West storytelling. Let me know how you felt about this story. Leave a comment down below. Type 1 if you enjoyed this story. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling tales of the Wild West.